Hello, and welcome back to Women for Wealth. So, today I want to talk about what women need to do to build wealth by the decades. So, the purpose of me doing these blogs is to help educate you, to help you to become wealthy, to help you on your journey to wealth. It's very important to have a financial strategy in place, and you need to do it by stages of life. So, you start off, you're a teenager, you probably have a part time job after school so you can put gas in your car and take care of oil changes and things like that. That is important that you start at that point to budget and save. You need at least $1,000 in an emergency savings account. But once you move into that next phase of life, let's say you graduated high school, you graduated college, you got your bachelor's, you're starting your first job, you're in your 20s, you need to lay a good solid foundation for financial health. So how do you do that in your 20s? The first thing you've got to focus on and learn the skill of budgeting. You need a budget to track income and expenses on a month by month basis, and you need to go back and revisit how you did periodically. Once a quarter, go back and see, okay, did what you forecast to spend, was it actually what you spent? What variances do you have? Why do you have variances? Were you more frugal than you thought you were going to be, or did you spend more money than you thought you were going to? If you've had to dip into your emergency fund, you need to refill that. You need, in your 20s, I would say 3 months of living expenses in an emergency savings account. Something that, high yield interest account, something that you can liquefy pretty easily, but you can earn more than just a regular savings account on. That's what I recommend for your emergency fund. You also need to learn how to manage your debt. Focus on paying off your student loans if you have them, and paying off credit card debt if you have that, and close those out. And finally, you need to start learning how to invest. Start investing as early as possible. Compound interest is truly a miracle, but only through time. The longer time you have, the more money it's going to make. Compound interest is amazing, but you got to start early and you got to be consistent. If your employer matches your 401k, then you definitely need to put in that full amount for the match. That's free money, people. Don't leave it sitting on the table. So that's what you should do in your 20s. So what do you do in your 30s? When you're in your 30s, you're probably in a long-term relationship, or maybe already getting married, thinking about, what you're going to do. You're going to have kids. If so, how many kids you're going to have, all of that, all of those things, all those important life decisions typically happen in your 30s now. So when you're in your 30s, you need to think about buying a home. You need to understand mortgage options. There's a video link below why you don't want to do a 50-year mortgage. You definitely do not want to do that. I'm an advocate of a 15-year fixed rate mortgage for your home. There's different ways that I know people think they can get creative and pay their home off early. And it can work if you're disciplined. But make sure you do your research. Make sure you learn and understand all the little bits and pieces before you take on a mortgage. And also, is home ownership right for you at this stage in life? It is for most people in their 30s, because they are thinking about or married and considering kids. And so home ownership is a great way to go, because you can build long-term equity. Now, if you're going to be moving in 7 years, or you're not sure where you're going to live in 7 years, maybe you don't want to buy a home, because it can actually be a burden. It can be a chain wrapped around your leg. So think about it. Do the due diligence for you and where you're at in your life. We'll link a link below for a video on should you buy a house or should you rent. Watch that video, think about it, consider all the different options. Watch other YouTubers, see what they think. Should home ownership be a priority for you, or should you wait? Because maybe it's best for you to wait, but maybe it's right for you to buy a home at this point. In your 30s, you really need to increase your contributions on your retirement savings. You're starting to get into the point where you got to start really focusing on what's going to be your retirement, where are you buying assets, what are you going to do for cash flow. You need to really start thinking about retirement and putting a plan in place for that. Automate your deductions for buying your assets, be it stocks or 401k or whatever you're doing. Try to automate it as much as you can. At this point in your life, you also want to think about insurance. If you've got a wife or you've got kids that are going to be dependent on you financially, you need to have a health insurance plan in place. Review it, adjust it as you need to. There's health insurance, there's life insurance. I recommend both if you're in your 30s, especially if you're married and have kids. There's disability insurance you might want to consider. And also diversify your investments in your 30s. Explore mutual funds, EFT, and other investment vehicles. Sometimes you want to diversify and you spread your risk out. Diversifying is a great way to reduce risk. So when you're in your 30s, think about diversifying and, what other assets can you buy to help you with your long-term wealth journey. In your 40s, you need to think about expanding financial security. In your 40s, you need to increase your savings. You need to have at least 15% of your income put away for retirement. Your emergency fund, you ought to have 6 to 9 months of an emergency fund at this point. And you need to think about funding education for your children or your grandchildren, even if you have them at that age. I'm 48. I've got 2 granddaughters already, so I'm looking at what I can do to help them in their career plans. Also, in your 40s, think about tax planning. You need to be able to minimize tax burdens so that you can maximize your own investments. Instead of giving the money to the government, find ways to keep your money in your pocket to help with your retirement plans. If you need to hire a tax advisor, I am not against paying somebody for their expertise. If they know something I don't know, I will say I look for advisors that are willing to teach me, not just tell me what to do, but to teach me and explain to me why they recommend something. So find an advisor with the heart of a teacher. And finally, in your 40s, probably ought to start thinking about estate planning. And that is something that I have not done yet that I've got to do. So, if you haven't done it yet, hey, you're in the same boat as I am. You need to update wills, think about setting up a living trust, think about how you're going to make sure your family's taken care of if something catastrophic were to happen to you. And in your 50s, you need to really start planning for retirement in your 50s. A lot of people think, I'm 50, I'm going to work till I'm 70. My grandmother worked till she was 70. Matter of fact, her last day of work was her 70th birthday. And I've always said, I'm going to be like Nana. I'm going to work till I'm 70. But you know what? Now that I'm 48, I'm like, I don't think I want to work till I'm 70. I want to be able to retire when I'm still physically healthy enough to do the fun stuff that I want to do and enjoy it. So I need to start preparing for retirement sooner than later. And I think you should too. Catch up contributions. If you can, do the catch up contributions on your retirement account. Try to get those as high as you can. Debt reduction. Hopefully you do not have any commercial debt or interest related debt. It's time to focus on paying off that mortgage and, having things that are completely paid off. Do not have credit cards. Hopefully you got rid of credit cards in your 20s, but if you're in your 50s and have credit cards, it's time to pay them off, close them out. I am not against having one emergency credit card. So I have an emergency savings account that's usually a high interest account, which I'd have to move money from one account to another to access it. So I do keep one low balance emergency credit card. That way, if something comes up out of the blue and I need cash right then, I can put it on the credit card. Then I transfer the money from my emergency savings, pay off the credit card that same month, and then I refill my emergency savings account. So that's something else to think about. Healthcare planning. Y'all, I'm telling you, if you want to be wealthy, you got to be out of debt and you've got to have health, because medical is just ridiculous in this day and age. I don't know what we're going to do in America. Healthcare is becoming a crisis. It's becoming too expensive. You can't pay $4,000 a month for insurance where you never meet the deductible. And so you're constantly paying out of pocket on top of the $4,000. And, it's a scam, because my son went to the doctor, had insurance. They wanted him to pay $700 on top of what the insurance paid. Fast forward a couple months, things happen. He actually declined his health insurance because he didn't have the money to pay every month. And he went to the doctor, same thing. And it was $300 out of pocket because he didn't have insurance. And so, it's kind of crazy because Having insurance, the doctor wanted to charge him and the insurance both. He got paid twice. But then, without insurance, it was a lot smaller amount just for him to pay for the service. Y'all, that seems like a scam to me. I'll just be honest. I'm not sure how to deal with healthcare. I don't know what the solution is. I'm just sounding an alarm that healthcare in the US is a crisis. And if you are in your 50s, you need to look at health insurance options, long term care insurance, etc., and so forth, possibly cancer insurance if cancer runs in your family. A lot of things to think about. And finally, in your 50s, think about your retirement lifestyle and expenses you plan to need in your retirement so that you can make sure you have the cash flow available for you to be able to retire, keep your peace, keep your sanity, keep your freedom, because that's really the goal with wealth is freedom and choices. You get to live the way you want to live without the stress and anxiety. So let's talk about 60s and beyond. So maybe in your 60s, you're blessed to be able to transition to retirement. I think that's great. If so, you probably need a plan in place. You need a plan in place. You might need a wealth advisor to help you put this plan in place, a tax advisor to help you with tax strategies. You need to know what your withdrawal strategy is going to be. What does 401k, what does IRAs, what do all these vehicles require for your withdrawal? When you get to a certain age, you have to start withdrawing from these accounts. How much? How's it going to affect your taxable income? You need to plan all that out and you need to know all that. So start in your 60s before you retire to put a written plan in place. Social Security. Social Security benefits and when to take them. You see all kinds of different opinions on YouTube. Some people say, no, you don't want to take your Social Security till you're 72. Oh, no, you want to take your Social Security at 63. And there's all these different philosophies and reasons. Honestly, listen to a couple of them, listen to different people's opinions, and then make your own choice. Come up with what's best for you. And then don't give up on budgeting. 60 and retirement and beyond is a requirement for budgeting. Hopefully you learned your budgeting skills in your 20s and 30s and you'll be able to just transition that into retirement. But if not, learning budgeting skills is critical for you at this point. And finally, legacy planning. How are you going to leave funds for heirs or charities? You got to start thinking about that and planning for it. I want to be able to leave enough money in my family to help take care of my grandchildren. Now, that means I've got a lot of work to do between now and retirement. And I understand that. But you know what? It's a goal. I need to come up with a plan and then I need to work the plan and I'll get there. And you will too. So in conclusion, think about your financial strategies by the years of your life, where you're at in your life. Your choices have to be for you and where you're at in your life and what's going on in your lifestyle at that point. And then do what is best for you. Don't listen to anybody else because everybody else is in a different situation and has a different point in their life than you do. So you've got to listen to all the information, really think about it, come up with what your plan is for your life, and then execute. I hope you look at your financial plans regularly and adjust as necessary, especially as you go through the phases of life. You need to kind of modify and adjust your plan. Don't write it down once and then file it away. And you want to have what we call a living document. A living document is a document that is constantly updated and edited to the current situation. And that's what you want to have with your financial plan. You want to have a living document. Your financial plan and your budget should change with you as you go through the phases of life. I invite you to ask questions. Ask questions of me, ask questions of others. Where are you at in your life? Are you in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s? Are you in retirement? Where are you at? What phase of your life are you in? Do you have a written plan? Do you have it automated? Where are you at and what are you doing? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I wish you health and wealth.